Hello and welcome to another episode of the Youngstown Click Be Connected podcast. I am so excited to have you guys back here with us today. And guess who we have on the show today? Somebody who chances are you're not going to really get to have a one-on-one conversation with a whole lot of the time, even though he is very relatable. We are sitting here with the Mahoning County Sheriff Greene. Now, I see his name in the paper. I see some of the things that the Mahoning County Sheriff Department does in our community. But I am so excited. I'm like a little kid right now. So excited to get to talk to you and sit down with you and ask you some questions, kind of pick your brain a little bit. So thank you for being with us here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored, and quite frankly, I do believe in this is my 12th year as sheriff now in Mahoning County, and this is, I believe it's probably my first podcast, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've done many
That's
interviews,
exactly.
but I don't think I've done what I would consider Facebook or podcast. Maybe a little on Dan Rivers or something like that. But this is my first official, what would be a podcast. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I feel like the experiences that you've had and the knowledge that you've probably gained and even come into the office with, you could probably have your own podcast, to be honest with you. So I'm so honored to get to be the first.
Oh,
That's amazing.
That's awesome. Hopefully you'll learn a little bit about my office and what we do and all that.
Yes. Because the more you know, the more able you are to connect in and to be a part of. So when I was a kid, I actually thought, well, not even just a kid. When I was a teenager, I remember talking to who I thought was a police officer, and I referred to them as a police man or police officer, and they said, "Oh, I'm a sheriff deputy," and I was like, "What's the difference?"
It's pretty much exactly the same thing. The biggest thing that separates us is we're an elected office. We're a county-wide office. We have the same jurisdiction and area that we can patrol than any police agency in Mahoning County. The way we do things here is if a township is incorporated, meaning they have their own tax levy, their own police department, and all of that, we generally assist them in doing the police duties other than the task forces that we take part in. What we do is we actively patrol the unincorporated areas, which is Berlin Township, Canfield Township, Ellsworth Township, and then we assist in a lot of the other jurisdictions that sometimes don't have patrol during certain hours for whatever reason. Probably one of our biggest statutory responsibilities is that building right over there.
Just a couple blocks away.
Yeah, the Mahoning County Jail, which was built in the mid-90s. When I first got hired, we worked in the old jail over on 21 West Commerce, and that was the old bars and all of that. That's when I started. I got hired in 1989. But yeah, we have a 24/7 facility over there. It averages anywhere between 400 and 550 inmates. We have full medical, full food service, full laundry. Mental health service, dentists. Psychiatry and all of that. Yeah.
Wow.
That's one of the things a lot of people don't realize with our budget. Our budget's really quite massive. It's almost $30 million. It's in the high 20s.
Wow.
And just the medical care for our inmates over the last 5 years, it was $1.2 million a year 5 years ago, and now it's $3 million a year. So if you compare it to some of these smaller townships and what their budgets are, our budget is would pay for their entire agency's patrol in some of these different smaller townships. So it's really quite incredible. We have 220 employees altogether. We have about 175 deputies. We have multiple correctional officers. We have civilian employees. And it's a 24/7 operation over there.
And it all happens without the average citizen, such as myself, even thinking about it. I mean, obviously I know what the jail is and stuff, but it's incredible, all the details and the specifics and the purposes, things that go into it. And thankfully, we don't even have to like you guys take care of it. So, but there's no way that the old jail held that many
No, the numbers in the old jail were 150, 100. And this jail actually held as many as 800 at one point in time many years ago. And there were federal lawsuits filed about that. And the sheriff's office came under what's called a consent decree, which was under a federal judge's watch. And we had to keep our numbers at certain levels, and the staffing had to be at certain levels because and that was just it was a strict rise of crime at the time. The sales taxes had failed a couple of times. They were on and off against sales taxes. There were layoffs, and things were tough in the area. I've been very, very lucky during this. Like I said, it's my 12th year as sheriff, and our criminal justice sales tax, it became a criminal justice sales tax almost 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Okay.
And we've really stabilized
that's throughout Mahoning County.
Yeah. Wow. And it really is just 3/4 of 1 penny. It generates about $32 million a year.
Wow.
But that 3/4 of 1 penny can only be spent on the sheriff's office, the prosecutor's office, the coroner, and dispatch. And, back then there was maybe at times a little bit of lack of trust there with how people were spending the money.
Right.
So they wanted to know what their money was going towards.
Okay.
So naming it as a criminal justice fund and you can only spend it on these different entities, I think gave people the confidence to end up passing that. We've renewed it 2 additional times now.
Yeah.
And, I like to think that's a attaboy for the job that we're doing and the men and women down at the sheriff's office. We've been good stewards of the people's money. We got so many initiatives where we help offset some of the costs of what it costs the taxpayer. So it's been really, really beneficial.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. So one thing I can't help but think of, though, is, so you went from sorry, I feel like I'm going backwards, but I just have to, my brain, this is how my brain works. So we had a jail when Youngstown was booming and it held about 150 people, you said, right?
Correct.
And then we built a new jail and all of a sudden, so is it like if you build it, they'll come? Or is it like, why is it just a change in culture?
There was an overcrowding problem at the old jail. On top of that going on, many cities across Ohio and across the United States had jails as well. But the trends going across the nation where these cities were closing their jails and putting the burden 100% on the county. So back then at the time, I was a reserve deputy at the time. I think it was Ed Nemeth. Jim Lewandowski was a chief deputy back then, or maybe he was a liaison officer, but they came up with the idea to build a much-needed facility. Okay. And that's when I think the first half-cent sales tax was put on to help fund that project. And and the rest is history. It took maybe 3 years, 4 years. I don't know the exact amount of time it took to build it, but I believe it went up in 95 or 96.
Got it. Okay. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That totally. So it went from like city to county. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, when it comes to like rehabilitation, like it's called corrections and rehabilitation, right?
Yeah.
So you guys have like schools and stuff in there as well? Like
there's yes.
Or is that more like prison?
No, we have instructional classes. A lot of it is for drug treatment. A lot of it's mental health treatment. And I say this a lot of times that the Mahoning County Jail is by far the biggest mental health hospital in Mahoning County. Wow. Hands down it is. And I used to say 1/3, but I was quickly corrected by the jail psychiatrist that over 50% of the population within our facility has some pretty serious form of mental health.
Wow.
And I've always said this, about 90% of our population either has a mental health issue, an addiction issue, and or both. So those are the things we try and tackle. I've matured a lot over the years. Judge Durkin, who runs the drug court, does a fabulous job with the drug court. I viewed it as coddling those individuals, and I was actually bothered by it. What's wrong with you? How are you? And I've quickly come to learn, especially when it comes to running a jail and all that, you can't arrest your way out of this problem. You have to fix the problem. You have to try and take away the need for those drugs, which has been a constant battle with us when it comes, to mental health. Now we're dealing with the fentanyl. Fentanyl kills so much faster, so much more lethal.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, we were in Mahoning County, we were one of the first agencies to go with the Narcan. But, I chuckle now at times because we have Narcan in every one of our pods. Every one of our jail cells has Narcan in case an inmate gets in. I don't want to say it's common, but I would be a fool to believe that drugs don't get into our facility. And we've had people fall out in the middle of the day and somebody got something in the jail and they took it and it had fentanyl, and they've had to be Narcaned, and thankfully not successful, overdoses like that. We've had officers numerous times during pat-downs get sick and pass out because it's just such a small amount. A couple small grains of that stuff is enough to overdose you. It's so much more powerful than heroin, which was the old problem, and then the pharmaceutical industry with Oxycontins, triggered that addiction of the heroin.
Yeah.
And now it's the fentanyl. Yep.
Wow. So okay, man, I have so many questions. So, okay, let me go back to you real quick.
We might need to do 2 podcasts, huh?
I think so. Oh my goodness.
We haven't even scratched the surface.
I told you could have your own.
I got so many things I need to talk about here.
Oh my goodness. I am so, yes. But this is so fascinating. So yeah. So, okay.
Well, why don't we go in this direction?
Okay.
Why don't I tell you some of the things we do that many people don't realize we do at the sheriff's office, because we just started really the 2 basic things that everybody think. Of course, the sheriff runs the jail. Of course, the sheriff does patrol.
Okay.
But we do security for all of the county properties within Mahoning County. We cover all of the courts. We transport all the inmates to and from the penitentiaries, from the doctor's offices. We have a day reporting program where inmates, instead of being sentenced to jail, they come and we'll do work. They're supervised by deputies, but these I call them inmates, but they're day reporters. So they just show up at a designated area to do work for 8 hours, and it counts as 1 day in jail. But what it ends up being is they're doing work for nonprofit agencies or government. They'll do landscaping. They'll pick up garbage on the highways and stuff. Sometimes you'll see a deputy van on the highway.
So they have that option to do that instead of actually go sit in jail.
Well, it's a form of sentencing. They would rather show up and do work somewhere.
Yeah.
We've worked with the engineer's office when potholes have been really bad the last few years, and the inmates will show up and they'll help fill potholes with the employees out there in the engineer's office. We run the drug task force, or we administrate.
See, there's so many questions. I want to go on so many routes. Okay.
We administrate the drug task force, which is called the Mahoning Valley Law Enforcement. And shame on me for not, the Mahoning Valley Law Enforcement Task Force is the name of it, but it was always called the Violent Crime Task Force, and then there was the Drug Task Force. Well, then they merged it. So it's the Mahoning Valley Law Enforcement Task Force. Now, that's run by my agency, or the grant is administered, and the money and the accounting and all that is run by my agency.
Yeah.
There's a couple of my officers on it, but there's officers from the FBI, Poland, Canfield, Austintown, Youngstown, you name it. They do all the drug investigations in our areas, a little bit in Columbiana, mainly Mahoning County, and there's, I believe, officers from Liberty PD that's on that task force. They're very busy. They're constantly, there was just an article in the Vindicator about how much work they've done in the last couple of years. We have officers on the DEA. So there's
Wow.
sheriff's deputies on the DEA task force.
Wow.
There's sheriff's deputies on the U.S. Marshals task force.
Man.
We started a human trafficking task force.
Yes.
That's been very, very successful for us.
Yeah.
Those are all. Anytime you hear of a task force, what it basically is, and I'll give you a great example, like the U.S. Marshals, there's only a couple of marshals here, but
Yeah.
it's a marshals task force, and they work under the federal colors
Okay.
of the U.S. government.
Okay.
Then there's multiple officers from all the agencies in our area that will donate one person, maybe part-time, one person will assign full-time to
Okay.
it, and they're all working on it now. They just go 24/7 when they're out on people that have warrants, and mostly dangerous people
Yeah.
that have warrants. And all task forces are basically run that way because having everybody pitch in to do it is 10 times better than this one just working alone in their community or their township or whatever. So the Human Trafficking Task Force, you've probably seen over the years, we do sting operations with people on the internet looking for underage boys and girls.
Yeah.
Those have been incredibly successful. I'm almost ashamed to say that we've gotten really good at it. We've trained other agents. I shouldn't say ashamed.
No,
It's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate.
That you know how good, because we want to make a difference. We want to be able to run an operation. And the last time we ran one, we got 21. This time we did it, we got 2 or 3 because we made a difference.
Right. Well, and when like for example, when I watch TV. And I see these shows where they're like going after these kids, or these kids are in a van, or they're locked up in a container or whatever. And you watch all this work going into trying to find them. And when they're found, it's always so moving, right? And so you want somebody good at their job on that case.
That's the job itself, and what ours is kind of. You start this human trafficking task force. You look for prostitution, you look for pimps, you look for handlers, you look for people taking advantage of those that are either addicted or they don't have a good family support system. And then it ends up branching off into child pornography or people looking for underage kids. And then there's, so we've, unfortunately, this is the word I'm looking for, gotten pretty good at that. I don't know if you remember, about a year ago, we did an investigation on the 2 massage parlors in Warren and the one in Austin town. And the total seizure money from those 3 places, and that's with bank accounts, property, all of that, is almost $2 million now just from that. You wouldn't think it, and it blew us away too, because we thought maybe it'd be like 200, 300,000 or something like that, but. The investigation in those type of operations not only work in our communities, but they're tied in throughout the state. And believe it or not, the day we did those raids, we had 28 agencies involved in those raids, and with about 11 agencies that were actively doing the investigation with us over a couple of years. And it was a huge success for us.
Wow.
Like I said, the other part of it is people online looking for stuff and looking for children, underage boys and girls. The Cuyahoga prosecutor's office has a human trafficking task force that works very closely with us.
Nice.
And they give us heads up of activity going on in our area. We'll take on a lot of those investigations, and a lot of that ends up in with child pornography and all of that. We have one of the only electronics dogs. Mahoning County Sheriff's Office has one of the only electronics dogs in Ohio.
Fascinating how they train these dogs.
Yeah, his name's Bubba, and he's a black lab. He's absolutely awesome, and we use him. And what he's trained, he'll hit on SIM cards, cell phones, any type of electronic equipment. And the way I understand it is there's some kind of component within those different type of electronic devices that I don't know if they spray it on there, or it's something that helps keep those electronics cool. And the dogs are trained to hit on those scents. And we've gone on, so I can't tell you how many search warrants that we have gone on where, we're human beings. Sometimes you're searching for a stick drive or a thumb
right.
drive, something that's so
So
small.
easily missed. Yeah.
He knocks it
Are
out of
you
the park. Yeah,
serious? Oh,
he's wonderful.
wow.
Yeah. So
Now, have you ever had like gotten on to go and see like, like 10, I had a friend looking for houses, and she went and looked at one out in Ravenna, and it was so creepy because it had crawl spaces, it had doors with only a knob on one side and not the other, and just picturing about what had taken place or what the possibility. Have you ever
it's
like saved a mass group of people
so
or found them or something
no,
like that?
and that's the next thing I wanted to kind of dispel there's sort of a myth about that where you think that the human trafficking there's going to be a semi truck somewhere and you open the door and it's all these young kids,
Yeah.
and that has not been our experience. We have certainly saved kids,
Yeah.
saved kids that have been abused, been under abuse, been exploited. And we know we've made a difference when it comes to a lot of that.
Yeah.
But that isn't how that isn't as prevalent in this area, that type of human
Thankfully.
trafficking. And I have no doubt that sort of thing does take place.
Right. Maybe on
Probably
coastal
on the
cities and
the
stuff.
borders,
On the-
on the
yeah.
borders coming over, from Mexico.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that there's situations like that.
Yeah.
But we have not found that to totally be the case here.
Good. Okay.
When people have asked, is there a pipeline from this city, this specific city? It really has to do with the person that is taking advantage of the individual that's being exploited or being forced to perform whatever. It just all depends at the time. We have multiple officers on that task force, the Human Trafficking Task Force, from the State Highway Patrol, the BCI, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, which is basically the state's police officers for the Attorney General's office, Austin Town, Warren. I can go on and on.
Yeah.
Multiple people on multiple agencies make up those task forces.
Wow.
The other thing that we have a homicide task force that we that we administer. I don't want to say administer the grant for. I don't really think it's a grant, but it's basically a task force of everybody that has an investigator or a detective on an agency, and they meet once a month. And what it basically is for is probably Youngstown's never going to need that because they regularly investigate homicides and they're good at it.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. It's the smaller agencies that may only have a couple of officers or whatever. And a great example is we went over in Lowville. We ended up helping Lowville on a double homicide that took place a couple of years ago, and we've just assisted. We just did one in Smith Township, and many of those agencies just don't have the manpower and or the experience or the ability to get the experience to do that type of work because they just don't have those individuals, that many people there. So we'd like to. Many people will call the BCI for assistance, but I've been really proud that my agency has been able to reach out and assist them in many of these investigations. We have a drone unit that's one of the first drone units in the area.
What do you use that for?
Oh, you name it, we've used it. Elderly people that walk away, children with autism that walk away. We have a bunch of bodies of water here. So unfortunately, when somebody goes down, human recovery. We've used it during fires because they have thermal cameras. We're able to tell them where the hot spots are.
Wow.
We've used them during barricaded suspects where there was, either apartment or people that live next door. We were able to use the drone to find out where the person was that we were looking at and able to evacuate people safely.
Yeah.
And really, it just the drones really go on and on and on. The ability of those, and they're using them a lot in warfare now over there in Ukraine and with Russia and all of that. So that's something else that we're very excited about. We have a volunteer dive team There's multiple
That
divers
is
from
so
different
cool.
jurisdictions. We have
Yeah, I love when you guys set up at the Canfield Fair and it shows all these different things
Yeah.
that you guys found through the dive team. That's
Oh, yeah.
fascinating because you're looking at history, like
Yeah.
what, how did this get there and how,
Yeah, I really admire those guys to do it because
Yeah.
it's not something I'm really ready to volunteer for, to be running into an expired person underwater when you can't. I just don't
man,
see that
yeah.
as being, but they get a lot of satisfaction out of it, and it's pretty good work. So we just, we do the sheriff sale foreclosures. One of the worst jobs that a sheriff is responsible for is when a probate judge deems a person a danger to himself or family members, and you've heard the term pink slipping somebody.
Okay.
And it's when they're just a danger to themselves or to somebody else, and they probably have a mental issue or is going through some really hard times in their life. We're the ones that are ordered to go out there and get that person, get them into custody, and get them to the hospital, and get them, the help that those people need. So that's something else our officers do. We have a bomb dog. The bomb dog's name's Cliff. He's a yellow. Yeah, he's a yellow lab. He's really good. We ended up getting him because a few years back, and I was sheriff at the time, we had a bomb threat, but the bomb threat came in very vague, and it was like downtown Youngstown in the courthouse. Well, they didn't say which courthouse. So there's a federal courthouse across the street, there's the Common Pleas, and then there's the city.
Right.
And so they had to evacuate all three. And at the end of the day, the closest bomb dog was almost an hour away in Summit County, and I just wasn't going to have that anymore.
No, right.
So we ended up getting one. A lot of people assisted us with him. He's awesome. He's a diplomat for the sheriff's office, and he's wonderful. Yeah,
He's a yellow lab.
he's a yellow lab. He's just brought a lot of joy, obviously, to the deputies and all of that. And now that, the dog's accessible any day turn, because schools are the ones that get the bomb threats.
Yeah.
And they have the ability to clear and cover so much space, and they're able to get that school back on track where they need to be at the same time while safely inspecting everything. We have a human remains dog.
Really?
Yeah, his name is Jackpot. And we call him Jackpot because Hollywood Casino was nice enough to donate the funds to send our officer to get trained and to pay for the officer. So we gave them naming rights.
And they call it
Jackpot. Yep.
Aww.
Yep. And so that's one of those situations where does Mahoning County or does my agency by itself really need a human remains dog? Yep. Probably not.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I want to be able to use this dog on cold cases, which he's actually worked on. They're very well trained in what they do. If there's an issue somewhere else in Ohio or somewhere out of the state, I'm putting my officer on a plane and sending that person to help aid in those situations.
So there was just a recent news article where the remains of a guy who I remember them looking for, I think in 2021, was found over on Salt Springs Road.
Yep.
Yeah. And just, how many cases go unsolved just because you don't know where to look. And from the paper, it was like some totally unrelated case in Struthers. Somebody said something that resulted in them finding this body that was a couple years old.
Things like that happen all the time. You always hear about the person's dog going off into the woods and coming back with a bone too or something. That happens from time to time. But so we and our other two canines are one's a Dutch Shepherd. His name is Phantom. And we named that dog Phantom because we wanted to honor Bruce Zolden because he's supported our office so much, and Bruce Zolden has donated his property down on Martin Luther King for us to use our gun range and all of that.
Nice. Okay.
So he's a great dog. He's a drug dog, and he actually will follow, attack or bite commands. And we have another dog named Connor, who's a Belgian Malinois, and he's a drug dog as well.
Really?
So we actually
a
have
Malinois?
yeah. So
Wow.
well, they're the most hands down. They're the most athletic, and they're just.
Is that why you choose? Like I noticed they're all male dogs. Are they because they're stronger, faster, more agile, or is it just easier to train the males? Or
so just thinking of that right now, I don't know why. You just and all of ours are males. So did you just pick up on that, or did you know that as a question?
No. I just picked up on it.
It might just be coincidental. I know that it might be just coincidental that's the case, but if somebody would know,
that's so funny.
they could tell you about that. But
the only reason I ask is because I have dogs.
Okay.
And one of my puppies that it actually went to a guy in Texas, I believe.
Okay.
And he was training. He was like hired by the military or the base to train the dog to sniff something, to be a work dog on the base. And I got the feedback that the dog was better, like performing better than the German Shepherd in the training. But it was a female. And so I just didn't, it doesn't really matter, but I just wondered if males have a different agility or toughness or something.
I've never heard that. The one thing I do know is they don't want to get them fixed. And if you're a pet owner, for obvious reasons, if you're a pet owner, you want to get your dog fixed because you don't want puppies everywhere, number one. And number two, they say it helps with them potentially maybe not as at risk healthy. to get cancer or anything like that. Well, in law enforcement and when they're working dogs, you leave. You don't get them fixed, because it helps with their drive, their energy. It's probably a testosterone thing or whatever.
That makes sense.
With male dogs, so that's one of the things is we won't. I don't think we've gotten any of them fixed. We may have.
Okay. No, that's fascinating.
So we have 5 of them, and they're great. They're all
and they each live with like their handler.
Yeah, they basically at home become a pet, but they're with the handler when they come to work, and they're trained, and
amazing.
And when they retire, when they get old enough, and it's time for them to retire, the trainer can have them for $1. That's exactly how that works. But they're family pets when they're at home. Yeah,
that is cool.
Yeah, they're quite awesome. Yeah. So
I had no idea that the sheriff department did so much. Now, have you seen anything do you still get surprised, or do you pretty much you've seen so much and you've been in office for, would you say 12 years?
Well, my 12th year, yeah, but I got on in 1989. No, not as much anymore. A lot of the human trafficking stuff is a little bit shocking, and you can see how it affects, some of the officers, with it, but. Overall, not really.
If you could say, for example, if you could say, man, okay, how am I trying to say? Like one apple can grow 10 trees, right? Theoretically, because they all have seeds in them, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so sometimes we see so many problems in society, but it comes down to one systemic thing, like a pattern that you're like, man, this seems to be at the heart of a lot of dysfunction or choices or bad mental health. What would you what would you say, man, I wish I could fix this? And I know that it's beyond one person fixing, but is it trauma? Is it poverty? Is it, no opportunity? What would you say seems to be at the heart of a lot of?
So you just named everything. Generally, areas that are not as affluent as other areas are obviously going to have higher crime rates. Core family is huge. Growing up with, a family that's not split, male role models is also huge.
Wow.
Lack of opportunity for individuals. That all certainly plays a part with it, without a doubt. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that something? Yep. Mindset, all that stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yep.
That's I always want to get to the heart of things. And that's what I kind of find, that a lot of times it's mindset, that people think that they're different or somehow that they don't have the opportunities that everybody else has. Or, I grew up so poor, mm-hmm. Yep. But my mom, she made sure that we didn't think of ourselves as poor in our mind. And I'm so thankful. The older I get, the more I value
I'm
that.
sure she made sacrifices and all of that.
100%.
So you felt, yeah,
and
100%.
we didn't have Christmas. The first Christmas I had a store-bought present, I must have been about 10. And it was a friend of my mom's that bought us each one present. Before that, all of our gifts were homemade. She would make us clothes for Christmas.
Yeah.
And we had this this like fake plant that we and the exciting thing for us is we would wrap our toys and want to give them to our mom, and we were so excited, like she's gonna like my present more than your present. Like there was like, I just remember that innocence. And then I remember the first Christmas we came down running downstairs, and we were so excited for her to get our presents, and we all like stopped. It was like a cartoon where we all bump into each other because there were actual like real presents sitting there. And
oh, what a memory, huh?
yeah,
Wow.
I totally. So it's interesting though, because when you think about like how poor we actually were during those years, but she had the wherewithal to say, hey, this is not who you are. You know what I mean? So it's interesting because I feel like even in poverty and even in lack of situations or temporary setbacks, it's important that people are told like, hey, you're resilient, you're bigger than this. Like, we everything we had, all our bikes, everything were from garage sales. We got a swimming pool from a garage sale and dug out the hole ourselves into the ground.
Yeah.
So we have a swimming pool. Like it's just amazing. Different times, what I mean?
You're taught so much by role models. And it could be a mother, it could be a father, it could be an uncle. You're just taught so much at home. And it's really core values on just how to treat other people, how to treat authority figures, how to treat your elders, how to treat them with respect and all of that. And if you start missing that right away and you allow a person just to start running off the path, it just, then that snowballs.
Yeah.
And, that's one of the things now, you can get into the whole Oxycontin things and the drug addiction or, untreated mental health. And that's one of the biggest things, like I told you, I see in our jail. I know it's in the 90 percentile that it's mental illness or drug addiction or both is the reason why they're in there. And we're trying to deal with that,
Yeah.
we have programs with mental health called the Stepping Up program, where we make sure that, literally when you had somebody in the jail when I first got in and they were done with their sentence, it's like, get them out, get them out the door. It's so much different now.
And has it been effective?
Well, the biggest thing is getting your hands on them, especially if they're addicted or if they're having mental health problems. And then when you're in there, because we have a 24/7 medical staff, you want to get them on the meds that they should be on, and then you get them mentally stabilized, and or if it's drug treatment, and let's say they have nowhere to go or they've burned all of their bridges and they don't have any support staff left. And a lot of that is with mental health. There's a lot of issues with that. But then we try and work with the nonprofit agencies to be able to get them somewhere to stay, somewhere to go to, X amount of days of their medications that they're on. They're not just going to be cut off. They're here you go. And hopefully that gives them a little bit of a head start instead of just going out and committing a crime just to survive, just to eat, just to,
Yeah, that's
so
tragic.
So that's one of the things we do.
What is the, sorry.
Go ahead.
What is the right now the biggest challenge being a sheriff or sheriff deputy or police officer? What is around here? I know that different places have whatever, but what would
the biggest problem that we are done? And it's not. I'm not going to tell you drugs. I'm not going to tell you crime. What I'm going to tell you is manpower. Ever since COVID, ever since the George Floyd incident, people ever since law enforcement, I'll say it, has been villainized. Nobody wants to do our job anymore. The other problem was with COVID and the desperate need for employees. The other types of jobs out there that normally were paying $9 an hour will now pay $17, $18, $19, $20 an hour.
Right.
And we have not been able to adjust our pay as much. And it's very difficult to get individuals into law enforcement now. Everybody's feeling it.
Yeah.
But when you're in the Mahoning Valley area, you don't pay as much as many other agencies might in either Cleveland or Akron or the Columbus area. It's just very difficult to recruit, especially when we haven't. That's me, I think. Let me. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's just very tough to, because I don't blame them.
Yeah.
Who wants to be called names? Who wants to have people walk up to them and give them the middle finger? Who do I know that there's bad cops out there? Absolutely, I do, and it's our job to get them out. And the ones that we identify with that, we do. But not all police officers are, my faith in humanity tells me that 98, 99% of them get into that line of work because they want to help people. And I think law enforcement is really a raw deal. And it's something that we're, I think, coming out of. We get a lot of thank you. It's just like the Vietnam veterans who were treated, when they came back from war. But what is a lot of this stuff done that law enforcement has seen over the years too? People get a thank you for their service now. They get an appreciation said to them now, and I'm so happy to see that, especially happening to their generation. Because can you imagine being forced to go somewhere?
It's one of the greatest errors of our generation, of this generation, is what happened after Vietnam.
Yep.
Or during, after,
Yeah. So right, and then just the way they were treated is just
and here we go,
horrifying.
round two with the police. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. The law enforcement. Wow.
So that's probably the biggest challenge right now, and agencies are now taking officers from other agencies, and because either the pay is better or and that's become a real challenge, especially to the smaller agencies that obviously can't afford to pay as much money, and which is so ironic because I get what many protesters wanted. They wanted to raise the bar for the police. They wanted police to be better trained. They wanted police to, check all the, dots for training and all of that. And what it really has done is make things more difficult because now everybody is short-staffed. There isn't the money to train as much, although a lot of it's been mandated, from Governor DeWine and the Attorney General Dave Yost, but it makes it pretty rough. Yeah.
So I was talking to a guy who just moved here to this area from New York City, and I asked him why he moved here, and he said he said I love the city. I was born and raised in this city. He said I lived through it, through the gang violence of the 70s and through the crazy 80s, and he said it was never as bad as it is now. And I said, really? And he said, because back then they could be robbing somebody or they could be fighting and the police show up and everybody ran. He said, now they're not even afraid of the police. The police show up and they have no, and that was like crazy because I lived in New York City. So to picture the city like that, like it breaks my heart.
The way that law enforcement and shame on me for ever looking at a TikTok ever, because you look at one or two situations where a police officer isn't treated right or being treated like crap from somebody in the public who's completely out of line. Your algorithm immediately goes to that, and then that's all you get sent after another. And that
algorithm is so crazy. It wants to know.
Yeah. So, you have to put up with so much more now. Obviously there are cameras everywhere. So don't, and my officers had to go through that when we went to body cameras. We were, that was, something that I wanted to do. I wanted to raise the bar. Not that I wanted to catch my people doing anything. I wanted it to make them treat everybody the way they deserve to be treated. So it actually raised the bar. What it really did, I think, was increase the protection of our liability. The false allegations on our police officers would just drop to almost nil because we had a video of what took place. We had many people call with complaints and allegations against our officer, and we'll tell them, hey, come on down, we'll play the video for you. And you know what, never mind. So and at times I want to say maybe twice, but after reviewing video, it was just not the way I wanted an individual in the public treated, and they came in and they were called in and they were disciplined from us quickly because it's something I don't think's right. Doesn't
Yeah.
people are, when you're dealing with people in our line of work, they're already in a bad
Right.
way. They're either in a heightened level of anxiety. They got something traumatic going on. And that's one of the things you have to do as a law enforcement officer. Is you got to be a bit of a psychologist too. You got to be a friend, protector. And you always got to do what's right. And doing what's right is a lot easier than what a lot of people think. You could sleep at night.
Right.
And you don't have to. Yeah.
Now, how do you personally, or how do you recommend, or just have you figured out to deal with an emotionally exhausting day? Because I know that as those things that you have to be the psychologist, you have to be the protector, you have to be the one with a level head in an emotional situation. And then you have to decompress and you have to be there for your family or be there for the people that you love. How do you do that?
Well, the average age or lifespan of a police officer is already much less than most regular vocations. People decompress in their own ways. Some officers choose alcohol. Some other, lift weights. They run. They do whatever. There's programs implemented for our officers to be able to deal with the stress because we see things that aren't normal. No. And shouldn't be.
No.
And but that's just part of our job. When there's something bad going on, we're the ones running to it, and that's at the end of the day. That's really what it's all about. But people have their own coping mechanisms. Hopefully, they aren't destructive coping mechanisms. But in law enforcement, officers do tend to drink. I like beer, IPA. Preferably myself. I might have increased drinking a little bit once I became sheriff, but
let's see, where was I had a question. I had a good question.
I throw you off. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah. No, so okay, so after how many years is considered a full career?
So normally a full career in government was always 30, and then a PERS, Public Employee Retirement System, has recently moved it, I think, to 32 years, maybe even 33 now. Law enforcement can retire in Ohio with 25 years, but if you go at 25 years, you don't get the same amount of benefits that you would if you waited until 30. So it all depends. In our line of work, double dipping is prevalent.
Yeah.
It's frowned upon by the media, or especially the Vindicator. They think it's wrong.
Really?
I scoff at
do
that.
Side jobs and stuff?
No. To be able to retire and then be able to come back working, to them it's double dipping, and they view that it's the government money. What I'll tell you is we can't hire officers now. The ability to allow them to retire, and at least in my office, they can retire and come back at 10% less of what they were making, and it really it stabilizes our longevity. Will keep people a little bit longer. Now they have to be physically fit and still able to do the job, but it's really helped us. One of the other things that have happened during the I'll call it the hiring crunch since I almost said since 9/11, since
since the COVID.
Yeah, since COVID, it has been the actual age of law enforcement officers was 21, and they've now lowered it to 18 years old.
What?
So yeah, absolutely, and that's been another thing, and so yeah. But an average career is probably between 30 and 35 years. We can retire at 25, but with a reduced retirement, really not as much financially reduced, but it's reduced with medical benefits and stuff that you may get if you didn't stay until you were 30 or 32 years in the job.
So I remember what I was going to ask you before Okay, so you seem like a pretty positive person, a pretty
I try to be.
Do you ever feel disheartened? Do you ever feel like, man, I'm chasing all right, do I even need to go further? And then after that, why did you decide to even go into law enforcement in the first place?
Well, here's what I'll tell you about my
Okay.
job. I think my job is the greatest job, and law enforcement is a good job, but it's stressful, but it's very rewarding. At the end of the day, being able to help people,
Yeah.
and you really do feel something from that when
Yeah.
you know that you're making a difference. But at the same time, it is very stressful, and it's certainly not for most people. When I
Right.
say this job isn't for everybody, it's really not for everybody.
Right.
It's just
right.
a couple of us for
it's not
some
for
reason.
me. It's not for me.
Right, that are able to do that.
Wow.
And do I ever feel disheartened? What I'll say is, as sheriff, I got the greatest job in the world. I love my job. Do I have sleepless nights? Yes. Is it often? How do you quantify often? I'll say that, once a month or once every few weeks, maybe something happens to, where you're really troubled by it. And part of that comes from being responsible or being the head of an agency with 225 employees.
Yeah.
You have 225 home lives. You have 225 people that do their own thing or get into trouble, or their behavior isn't, or do super things, or do fundraisers
Right.
on that. They do great things too.
Yeah.
But when you're responsible for that many individuals, and I would always tell people, I got the only job where you can go to bed and wake up and all hell broke loose, and you didn't do anything wrong yourself, but you're
Oh,
trying to put
man.
out fires. So
Just as soon as you open your eyes.
super job. I love the job. I'm proud to serve the people here in Mahoning County. We think we've done a great job. We've been really proactive with everything. If there's anything new out there or cutting edge, if we haven't done it, we've looked at it, and there's either a reason why we have or we haven't gone with it.
Wow.
We try and stay up with everything, especially technology. It's
Yeah.
I'm proud to have my job, and
That's
I'm
amazing.
58 years old. I
What?
want to do this for
What?
a little
I
bit
would.
more.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I would not have guessed that.
Yep. So-
Okay. So how old were you when you decided you wanted to be in the law enforcement?
So I got into law enforcement, and I hate saying this. Everybody's like, oh, I always wanted to help people, and that's all I ever thought about and all that. I
Right.
literally was sort of aimless when I was in my early 20s and going to college off and on, and I was bartending, and there was just a few people that were also working there that ended up getting into criminal justice at Youngstown State University,
okay.
and then I got into criminal justice at Youngstown State, and then I ended up just going to the police academy. And
Okay.
at the time, it was kind of just a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just,
Right.
I think I'd like doing this. I think I'd be okay at this.
Okay.
I wasn't the type of student that had the background or anything like that at the time to
Okay.
become a
lawyer.
physicist or or chemical engineer or anything like that.
Wait, where did you grow up here?
Yeah, I graduated from Boardman High School.
Okay, okay.
I graduated from Youngstown State University.
All right.
I'm an FBI, a graduate of the FBI National Academy. I went there
Wow.
in 2008, and that's some prestigious training that you get to go down there and experience for 11 weeks in Quantico, Virginia.
Wow.
And just after you're there for so long and you get so many experience, I worked many years in the courthouse security, and then I ran the security over there for a little bit, and pretty soon you start realizing it maybe developed a little bit of a pedigree
Yeah.
for potentially running for office. Now, that wasn't my idea. There was other people that came up to me and said, you got to be the guy. The sheriff's getting older now. He's in his last term. We all know that. He was 80 years old when he
Wow.
retired. Yeah. And that's when I was feeling the pressure from a lot of people that knew me and all of that, because my public speaking was absolutely awful. I was
That's hard
completely
to believe.
was completely horrified by that, and then I told you the story about how I discovered Toastmasters International.
Yes.
I was on the computer Googling drugs that would make you less anxious during public speaking. And Toastmasters International kept coming up, and I thought, you know what, I got to give these people a call, and they really do. You know, people have two fears: the dentist or public speaking. Really, I mean, those to me, those are the two biggest. The dentist is horrible, but you know, I've gotten better at that too. But truly, public speaking is just, if you're not comfortable with it, and then.
You say things you don't mean. It doesn't come out right.
Well, my chief deputy tells me when I public speak, and still I go through my own personal mental hell of, that I'm trapped in. But literally, the beginning of it was when I started thinking about potentially running for office. I knew I needed to be better at communicating. And I just said, and that's a big no-no with Toast. They have that,
all right, yeah, at Toastmasters,
they have that little hotel bell there. It was called the bell every time you said and I'm an ummer. And but here's what I'll say. So was President Obama. He said a million times too.
You're right. Yeah. You know what's funny is I used to say, you know what I'm saying, you know what I mean, and to make a long story short, numerous times in a conversation.
You know what I mean. You know or like,
yes, like. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So now I've done away with that, but my big problem, people always correct me at Toastmasters because I start my sentences with so, just randomly.
You're
like
comfortably buying yourself time to get your thoughts together. And a couple of times I had to do the speeches where the counter just kept ringing because I kept saying and then finally I broke from the speech. Would you stop that?
It might be because of you now, because during a speech they're not allowed to hit the bell.
Yeah.
Now.
Okay.
Yeah. So now, while somebody's giving a speech, you are not allowed to hit it. You can still count them. But you don't hit the bell,
Everybody was wonderful, and I still run into people that, hey, I remember you, but and I'm like, yeah, that's
cool.
awesome. Yeah.
That is so cool to know, though, what it helped you do, and now here, 12 years later, it's like the job, something that you were campaigning for at that time, and kind of nervous about. Here you're flowing with, and
I'm good. And one of the more easier parts about it is it's something that I've done my whole life, and I'm comfortable for the most part talking about.
Yeah.
And so when you know something or you're well informed on something, it's a lot easier for you as well.
So okay, I know we're rounding up here, and I want to respect your time
for
sure. Yeah, there's still so much we can talk about, but listen, I'm with an elected official. I don't want you to be by the time you leave in here, like, dude, I'm never going back.
You had Mary DeGennaro on, right?
Yes.
She was. We Googled you. I didn't want to. I wanted to make sure you weren't super left or super right. I just wanted to. I didn't want to get ambushed.
By the way, Mary and Steve say hello.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah,
they said, tell them we said hello.
Yeah, good people.
Great people. Okay, so, what was it? Okay, so let's go back to the human trafficking real quick.
Okay.
So you had said that it's not like a lot of people assume. A lot of it's online.
Yeah.
What would you say to after you say your thoughts? What would you say to parents or grandparents who are raising kids?
So 100%, and it's crime has evolved, as everybody knows, when it comes to the internet, and it's almost one of the only ways it's done now is through the internet. That's how it's advertised, either through the dark web or through different websites. The nice thing is, and I'll tell you this, any type of the prostitution or anything like that in our area, we're on those websites.
Okay.
And people that one school teacher that just got arrested, and
I know,
that was our guy, because we have people in that task force that's from That was Columbiana County.
Yeah.
But from Mahoning County, Columbiana County, and from Trumbull County on multiple agencies. And one of the biggest things and one of the biggest ways to attack is take away the availability, take away the Johns that are looking for it. And my message has always been for 11 years now, if you're on the internet and you're looking for that sort of thing, we want you to worry and think, and hopefully you are talking to a police officer at that time.
Right.
And we've arrested state officials, doctors, you name the job. And that's one of the things that surprises you too, that, the different type of vocations people are doing to get caught on this. And then that's one of the things we look to do, and we've gotten really, really good at. But back to your point about the parents, is to pay attention what they're doing on that internet. Pay attention who they're talking to. Verify who you're talking to. Don't go meet strangers. It is one of the easiest way for a criminal is to cloak themselves on who they are or what their intentions are on the internet. So you really have to pay a lot of attention, because think about how it's nobody's going to call you on your home phone or do it by mail. It's all communication is done by way of the internet right now, and that's how it's done. So that's the biggest, number one issue or problem with that sort of a crime.
What are there known red flags, like if a teenager is acting, because some parents you talk to and they're like, my teenagers don't want me in their business. They they don't want me to have the password to their stuff, so they feel a little bit like hemmed in. Like, are there red flags?
That's up to the parent to get over. That's something we can tell you what to do. We can put it out there that there's sex offenders in your neighborhood, and here's what you might want to do. Always Halloween's a big thing, and educating everybody about that. We can, but it goes right back to your support system at home, and then who's teaching you what and the right thing to do. There's so many dangers out there. And it's just, it's our job to keep up with it. Excuse me. The biggest thing is right now we're dealing with the phone scams, saying that they're Lieutenant so-and-so from the sheriff's office. You haven't come to jury duty. We're going to either arrest you, but if you can pay us in... I don't know why Walmart gift cards always, but if to pay in Walmart gift cards, and nobody's going to, and that's a huge message. Nobody is ever going to threaten to arrest you and then offer to get you out of it by way of a payment in any form. It just doesn't
or
work
the border.
That way.
You have somebody at the border, and you got to send.
But the problem is now they're spoofing our numbers. Okay, and they're using apps that the number is coming back on the caller ID, that it's actually an office or whatever. But and that's a frustrating part of it.
Do you see that working? I mean, is that like
it's
sometimes
continuous? It's continuous. It's nonstop. Yeah, it's nonstop. The scams are generally a little bit different every time, but it's all basically the same thing. At the end of the day, they want you to pay. They'll, and generally it's in the form of either wiring money or purchasing of gift cards. Yeah,
that is crazy. So I was frustrated.
Horrible.
I was frustrated with a friend of mine who got out of jail. He was in jail for 5 years or prison or whatever. And then he was on his way to work and he got one of those phone calls. And I was like, who called you? What? Because he was like, I have this gift card and I had to buy it and give it to somebody. And I was like, what are you talking about? So that's pretty much what they said, is unless you want to go back to jail, you have these fines that we're going to come to your work and we're going to arrest you. And he was like, I don't want to. So he goes and buys an eBay gift card and then gives them the stuff, and then is somehow convinced that the money's still on there. And he asked me to help him make a purchase on eBay because to use his card. And of course it wasn't on there, but I thought,
I haven't heard of that one.
Oh yeah.
That's a new one to me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, that happened to my neighbor actually. But the thing is they had, okay. So I thought if you have to order on eBay, can't you see the address it's coming to? But I guess they don't, because it could be a spoof address. It could be a friend's address in a drug house.
That's very common now. Those fake numbers that come up on the caller ID, and they're able to do that. And it's very difficult for local law enforcement, including the FBI and the state of Ohio, to be able to track these people. Many of them are out of India, Pakistan. Some are from different states.
Yeah.
How many times do you get the notification that a UPS package has been dropped off
Right.
at your...
I know.
And
I
I'm
know.
trained in this,
Oh,
and
my
I
goodness.
know that there wasn't one there. But in the back
But
of my
it's still-
mind,
I
I'm like, what if there was?
Thank
You know,
Thank
so
you.
yeah.
And you know, a mutual friend of ours, Jim Harishka, PM Consulting, he shared a story of one of his friends, because he does IT and he helps people once they get hacked and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a friend whose mom got a phone call saying, you know, we will settle the rest of your mortgage. And
Oh dear Lord!
and this is a one-time thing. It's got to be made in one lump payment, and we'll settle for $50,000. She went and she literally sent them $50,000, thinking, "Oh, this is such a great deal. I'll never have to worry about my mortgage." And obviously, it was a scam. So it's just it's crazy to think about all the.
These are people's life savings too.
Yeah,
that
of
they're
course.
just out of, and that's horrifying because you work your whole life to put money. You know, Social Security's not enough. It flat out's not enough, and these are life savings that people are being swindled out of. That many times are going to another country, and next to impossible to investigate. It's very difficult. So, you know, the best thing is just to be informed. Nobody's ever going to call you and threaten you and make you pay anything, you know, over the phone.
All right, you hear that, Youngstown Click?
Yeah.
Share this. Tell people. Spread the word. Don't fall for it.
Yep. Yep.
Don't.
100%.
You're hearing it from the sheriff himself.
No officer of mine or anywhere else for that matter is going to call you and tell you that you didn't show up for jury duty or and
Go by Walmart.
and just go by Walmart. You know, I like Walmart like the next guy, but you know.
Oh man, yeah. If we see you at Walmart, Sheriff Greene, with a bunch of gift cards,
With a stack of gift cards.
oh man,
Yeah.
okay, man. All right. So last question. I know we ask everybody this question. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, but I'm sure that we cover the region between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, so it could be as far or as close as you desire. But we always like to ask 3 of your favorite places to go, whether it's a food place or car place or just a favorite relaxation spot.
Generally, most of the places I go usually are out to eat when I'm with my wife and family. And
Okay.
I'm going to definitely say the Blue Wolf.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Which is in Plaza there in Boardman. I'm going to give a shout out to Mike Naffa and Inner Circle Pizza. They're really good there. We enjoy ourselves there. My kids like the cheese and bacon fries with extra bacon and extra cheese and ranch dressing. And I even got in an argument with my daughter. I'm pretty sure you can't eat anything more fattening than this. And then she started throwing everything out. I'm going, no, it's bacon and cheese, right? With fries that's fried, and then you're dipping it in ranch.
Oh, you're right.
How do you get, Oh, but it's so good, though. It's so good. Anyways, so yeah,
right,
you
so
know
Inner
what?
Circle.
I'm going to say Inner Circle. I'm going to say Blue Wolf, and then one of my favorite. And I never order dinner. We laugh about how we go there and just get appetizers.
Ooh,
It's definitely Steamers in North Lima. And the blackened tuna bites with like a southwestern dipping, and then they have it's called the spicy shrimp, which is just like a mixture of butter, garlic, and hot sauce.
Oh my!
It's just.
My mouth is literally watering right now. That sounds so good.
Well, when you hit the door to the place, there's like 2 sets of doors, so
Yeah.
there's an in between there, and you just as soon as you walk in, you get hit with a butter and garlic smell, and it knocks you down. It's wonderful there. And I hate to say restaurants, you know,
that's exactly. We all need to eat. Right?
Yeah. And that new Nicolini's is pretty good too.
Ooh, I have not been there.
Yeah, they're really good. They're hard to get into though because they're busy and
Speaks for itself. That's
wonderful.
So you make reservations. A lot of reservations.
I think so. I think you can. I'm not sure how that works there. I usually go and I'll try and either just stand there or wait at the bar or just,
Okay.
you know.
So I have to tell you. So one day after a stressful day, you've got to go try the Christmas Cafe in Boardman.
Where's that at?
It's right across from the mall next to like Bob Evans. There's Bob Evans
okay, in
and
the back there.
717. Yeah. And then in that little plaza, it is so heartwarming when you go in there.
Christmas Cafe.
Yes. I thought it might be a little cheesy, a little bit like
breakfast or?
Well, she just has like light foods and stuff, but it opens at 10 on Wednesday through Sunday. So she's closed Monday and Tuesday. Okay. But it is, I mean, it's so cute for the kids, but it's also, she made it because she wanted to be a comforting spot for adults too. So it's not just for the kids, but it's fun for the kids. And they have karaoke on Saturday nights and game night on Friday nights. And there's this little photo booth where you can do photos and videos and a whole bar for that, like a hot chocolate and stuff. And then she's working on getting her liquor license for like she's going to call it the naughty list. But it is so cute, and it's just honestly heartwarming. So after a stressful day or a busy day, I definitely recommend going to check that out.
Oh, very nice.
Especially in your line of work.
Good way to decompress.
Good way to decompress.
Yeah. We really try and pay attention to that with the men and women down there, though, because it is a tough job. Yeah. God bless them for doing it. We thank them all the time. And
yes. And so if you are a law enforcement or veteran or any of those, the people who put your lives on the line, EMTs, fire department, thank you for what you do. Thank you for your service to our community. I, for one, think our community is incredible. We've had our challenges, our ups and downs, but we are so resilient. And some of the chaos that hit the bigger cities didn't touch us here. Yes.
Didn't
and that
hit
is,
here?
I am so grateful for that.
And I think it's because we have a really good melting pot here of different cultures. And, we had great communication. Law enforcement works with many of our faith-based organizations. We just have really good relationships with each other and with the community. And I think that's all part of it,
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. So thank you guys. As always, I always say this, you are the best part of what makes Youngstown click. This area would not be what it is if you weren't here. So never underestimate your smile, your touch, your word, your hug, and just everything, your personality, your creativity. You are what makes this area great. So never forget that. As always, thank you to the Gallagher. This is a beautiful. Sheriff Greene just saw some of the apartments that they have on the Airbnb.
I'm totally shocked at how gorgeous it is in here. I want to come down here and stay. Even though I don't need to. It's really impressive.
That is a huge. That's a huge.
Really impressive. Yeah.
So especially if you come down for a concert at the Gavelli or the amphitheater or the Dior, whatever it may be, or just a night out. Definitely check out the Gallagher Airbnbs. They're on Facebook. And then thank you to Ohio Flame. They do custom made fire pits. The talk of the bonfire will be your fire pit. You could get it custom engraved, and it's made from steel right here in Columbiana. So it's going to last. It's not going to fly away because it's a nice centerpiece for your backyard. So thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to Sheriff Greene, not only for being here with us today, but also for everything you do every day, everything that you put into our community so that we could do what we do.
Well,
you do what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for recognizing that. And it's really been a nice experience, and I'm honored for you to have asked me to be on. So that's super.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thanks everyone out there. Appreciate it.
All right. As always, guys, until next time, you are the best part of what makes Youngstown click, and we'll talk to you later.